stop and take us out of the equation. Look what they're saying.
I am not a gang member.
I am not a gang member.
I am not a gang member.
If having bad taste in music was a crime, every parrot head in the world would be on the gang list.
If the government can target a group of people based on their musical taste, they can target a group of people based on any reason at all.
You're making history. We're the good guys here today.
If we don't do something about it, who's next? Where would it stop?
Without these freedoms, we are not the United States of America.
Tom, good morning. Jeff in Las Vegas. Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Wow. I'm almost speechless from this documentary. I know it's just, I've heard of ISP, I'm a Generation X, so I've heard of them a lot. I've heard their music. I've heard their controversy, the most hated band in America. You spent several years with ICP. Are you a changed man in some regards?
Yeah, it's been 7 years making this movie. I mean, you can see all my gray hair. It wasn't there 7 years ago. Yeah, I mean, the movie, Brenda Sanchez and I made the film together. We both directed and produced it. And we had no agenda going into the movie. We actually assumed, wow, so the movie is about ICP and their fans, the Juggalos. And there's 1 million Juggalos. And it's about how the FBI put them on the gang list. Every year they put out a list of gangs, MS-13, Crips, Bloods, Aryan Brotherhood, like the scary. These are clearly gangs. And one year the Juggalos ended up on it. So it's about their fight to get off the gang list. And we assumed going into it that, oh, well, this is the FBI. They don't just arbitrarily gang list 1 out of every 300 Americans. We're going to find a good reason. And here we are 7 years later, and we never found one. It turned out it was like an arbitrary designation. There's an unofficial 3-item checklist for what makes a gang. It's in the movie. And the band and their fans maybe check 2 of the boxes, which, by the way, apply to any fan base, any fan of a team, a church group, the Boy Scouts. If you're in a group and you have a name, I guess the FBI could consider you a gang. And that was shocking and surprising to us. And honestly, we went into it thinking like, we'll do a couple interviews. This is obviously going to get thrown out because it doesn't seem to make any sense. And then the case kept, as you saw in the movie, just kept going and going up higher circuits. And it had so many crazy twists and turns that we just kept filming.
And, the goal of this movie was to try to clear their name, to get them off the gang list. But what about public opinion? Even if the FBI came by and said, look, we made a mistake, these guys aren't a gang, but after years of this, drumming this into the public's mind, changing public opinion would probably be far more difficult, except for their 1 million fans, right?
Yeah, have you ever seen a group of fan base or a band that gets worse press than these guys? Every year they get voted the most hated band in the world. It's crazy.
But it affects them, doesn't it? I know they're extreme band, but they don't wear that as a badge of honor, do they? They're kind of fed up with it.
I think they used to.
Yeah.
But when the gang designation happened, essentially, I don't think it's a coincidence that the first group this ever happened to were ICP and the Juggalos. Juggalos are, did I mention this? Juggalos are a fan of Insane Clown Posse, for those who are uninitiated. I don't think it's a coincidence this happened to them, because it was essentially the US government saying it's okay to hate them. They're criminals. And I think it also isn't a coincidence because ICP's fans in general, the music speaks to them because they come from rough childhoods, dealing with trauma, dealing with abuse. They tend to be from like small Midwest towns. And I think anytime a group of underrepresented people start to group up and have some power, that's scary to the people that already have power. And I think it's set a really scary precedent. That's why the ACLU got involved. If this can happen to these people, this can happen to anybody. Here they are 10 years later, well-known band. They have some money to spend on this lawsuit, 1 million fans backing of the ACLU. They haven't gotten anywhere. Imagine if something happened to you or I.
And talk about defenders of the First Amendment. ICP is the last group you would think would be championing our First Amendment rights.
right? I mean, it starts out in the beginning, and you see it in the film, like they're laughing about it on camera. And they think it's a joke, just like most people. And then, toward the end of the movie, they're marching on Washington with tens of thousands of people, a lot of whom aren't juggalos, and they're giving an amazing speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, right where MLK and Forrest Gump did. And it's like, it's amazing to see their transformation and how much, I mean, they're from Detroit. They're used to fighting for what they believe in. And once they decide to fight for it, I mean, they don't stop. I find it really inspiring.
It reminds me of Larry Flint and Hustler.
Yeah.
Didn't agree with him, but he fought for everybody's First Amendment rights. But as a documentary filmmaker, Tom, did you get total access? Did you say that to these guys? Were there any boundaries? Because you were there recording everything that was happening, but did they pull you aside? Look, we're not doing this, or this is off limits, or?
I mean, it's been 7 years, and it's, as you see in the film, we go home with them. We interview Violent J's mom, which nobody had done. A lot of the images you see in the film, nobody's seen, because we went through her closets with her and like through the photo albums that had been, in the back under like the hamper. I got to say, like the first time we sat down with them to interview, it was after that first press conference, and it was, okay, that press conference was bananas. That was amazing. Let's just sit down and do an interview, hear what you're about. You can kind of see what we're about and decide if we want to do this. And I've never had an interview where the interview subjects were so open. I mean, they answered every question. It was really clear. They weren't trying to spin anything. They were just saying what was on their mind. And I think that's what they do in their music. And that's how they seem to be in real life. So,
well, you see them as characters, right? It's like Kiss. I mean, that face makeup is notorious. So I always thought that they put that on, their ICP on stage, but then they go home, right? They're just two high school dropouts living the American dream, which became a nightmare, but it looks like they were trying to say, look, that's a stage persona, even though a lot of it is what we believe in, but is there a fine line between who they are on stage and who they are in real life in your 7 years with them?
I mean, they're playing characters on stage. They don't like go home and they like go hatchet murder people. They've got kids, and you see, we go home with Violent J, the Disney Channel's on their TV. I didn't put that on. I don't want to watch the Disney Channel. But what they sing about, the emotions and the experiences, are all the emotions and experiences about the traumas they endured growing up. And that, they say it in the film, and I love it. They're like, if this music doesn't speak to you, you're not a juggalo. You're not meant to understand it. If it sounds like garbage, it's not speaking about how you've been hurt. And I think, they're both family guys with kids, and they love their families, and they work hard. And they play these characters on stage, but the violence is pretend. But I think the emotions and the challenges and what they're talking to their audience about is very real in a
sometimes fans will take it too far. There's always a few in there that'll, take it further.
Sure. I mean, John Hinckley Jr. saw Taxi Driver and shot the president. People hear an Eminem song and have murdered people. I mean, it happens all the time. You take 1 million of anybody, you're going to find some bad, scary people. You take 1 million people for whom the music sings about violence and trauma, is the number going to be a little higher? Yeah, maybe. But does that make them a gang? I mean, how many gang members wear Dodgers hats to identify themselves, or Raiders hats,
or blue or red?
Yeah. Does that make everybody who's everybody in Dodger Stadium a gang member? No way. It's never happened before.
Well, Tom, thanks for peeling back the curtain on this group and telling their story. I mean, it's just a fascinating documentary. I enjoyed it immensely. So thanks for joining me today. And it's called The United States of Insanity. So let's talk again soon. Thank you so much. Sounds good. If people want to buy the DVD or check it out, they can go to icpmovie.com. It opens December 10th.